and welcome to Stop Now, a social experiment enterprise where we stop, listen, and share. I am one of your hosts, Nate, and it is great to be back with you for another installment of our talk show. And I think this is going to be a really interesting installment, a really enlightening installment, because I believe this is the first time I've talked to our very special guest this week. That's a little tease for you. That's a little tease. I'm going to set that up there and put that to the side because before we introduce our special guest, we have to introduce Amer, who is here with us as always. Amer, how are you this week?
Yeah, hi Ned. Good morning. I'm good. Thank
Good
you.
morning. Yes, good to see you as always, my friend. And if Amer is here and if I'm here, then you know the third member of our team is here, the third musketeer, the third amigo, I'm trying to think of another cliche with three in it, Amer, but you know who he is, the voice of the voiceless, the man behind the scenes, the guy that keeps things running here at Stop Now. JK is with us. JK, how are you?
I'm good, Nate. I'm quite excited. You should not be doing this. Like, I have a special guest, and I have been wanting to meet her like for
Hmm.
almost 2 years, and we couldn't get hold of her. Like, so luckily, she agreed to meet with us this week. So it's a great honor, and I am quite thrilled because I align to her beliefs because we are going to talk about like non-belief.
Hmm.
Let's focus on her. Let's welcome her.
All right. So without any further ado, let's bring on our special guest for this week. She is the president and founder of the Black Non-Believers. Mandisa Thomas is here. Mandisa, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm sorry it has taken so long for me to respond to y'all, but I am very, very glad to be here today.
We are so glad to have you. Sometimes good things come to those who wait, and so the 2 year wait makes this just that much more special, Mandisa. So we are very honored, as JK said, to have you this week. I think before we get really deep into our conversation, can you just introduce yourself to the audience, who may be seeing you for the first time or hearing you for the first time? Introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about the work that you do.
Absolutely. So I am Mandisa Thomas, and I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated, which is headquartered in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I am originally from New York City, but I've been in Atlanta for over half my life. So, I consider myself, I guess, a Georgia peach now. So, first and foremost, I do identify as an atheist, which means I do not believe in any God, spirits, or supernatural beings. And so my work with Black nonbelievers is focused on fostering and creating community for fellow Blacks and and allies who also identify as atheists, humanist, agnostic, secular nonbelievers, and so on and so forth. And we host various events nationwide. And we also speak to the non-religious perspective. We advocate for human rights, which includes LGBTQ plus rights, women's rights. Of course, we speak out on racial justice, racial injustice, and almost everything that really impacts Black folks, which impacts atheists, and which impacts everyone in general, especially if you value human rights, especially from an evidence-based perspective. And so, but we are a very social group. We provide community support for those who are struggling with religious belief, as well as who face ostracism and challenges from family members and friends. It's just good for people to know that they are not alone and that there are other Black folks who represent our position. So that has been very much at the forefront of the work that we do here at Black Nonbelievers.
So many questions that I have just off of your brief introduction, Mandisa. First of all, shout out to the A, because as you can see, I got the Falcons in my background. I was born in
Yes.
Atlanta, so I live in Virginia. So we've got a connection there. But
Yes.
in
Okay.
terms of in terms of atheism in general, and then being a Black atheist particularly, what are some of the misconceptions or preconceived ideas that you've had to deal with that people might think of when they first hear that you're an atheist and you're a Black atheist?
Right. So you growing up in the South in Atlanta, right?
Hmm.
It's very, very religious here, even though Atlanta as an area is very progressive. It's still highly religious. And so one of the questions that I've been asked over the years, automatic, like off the rip, is what church do you go to? Like that is just, and I
Hmm.
had never experienced that until I moved to the South. So that was very, very strange. So one of the presumptions, especially being Black, is that you are automatically not just religious, but that you're Christian and
Right.
that you are just automatically a church goer. And when you perhaps, when because many of us try to just like shy away from it. We don't mind if people believe what they believe as long as they're not trying to push it on you, right? But
Hmm.
um, when you actually say that you're an atheist, there are some people who assume you don't believe in anything, that you don't have any morals whatsoever. There's a
Hmm.
running joke that people believe that we eat babies. Many people equate atheism to devil worship. They automatically assume that it's some sort of like the satanic version that you're used to seeing in the movies.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I say that because there is the organization, the Satanic Temple, which is nothing like that. But but and also too for Black atheists, there is this really, and other atheists of color. Um, there is this assumption that we are simply trying to identify with Eurocentric ideals,
Mm.
and we're rejecting Black culture. We are rejecting the Black identity because it is so rooted in religion that even if you have questions about Christianity and religion, it's like you're supposed to simply believe in some sort of deity as Black folk, because of our
Mhm.
history, especially in this country. So those are just a few of the misconceptions that when people hear, or when we say that, when they hear atheism,
Right.
uh, that it shouldn't even apply to Black folks, period.
It's interesting, Mandisa, because and JK is probably smiling right now because he and I have had this conversation going on 2 or 3 years now. Because JK,
Hmm.
as he mentioned off the top, is an atheist, and I am somebody who was brought up in a religious household, in a Christian household, in a Black
Hmm.
Christian household, which, as you mentioned,
Uh-huh.
like a Black Southern Christian household, which has connotations to it. And while I am not as into the church as I was, I'm still what I would consider like somebody who has faith and is spiritual to a certain
Right.
extent. And
Right. Okay.
so we go back and forth, and it's never contentious, but it's always interesting. Like we're probing each other. Like, so what do you think about
It's an
this? And what do you think about
objective,
that?
it's an objective discussion. It's an
Yes.
objective dialogue.
And
Yes.
so when you talk about like one of the things that I really picked up on because of the time we live in is how
Mhm.
closely politics and religion have become tied. And so when you talk
Oh
about
yes.
protecting LGBTQ people and protecting, brown folks and Black folks and women, a lot of times that pressure and that antagonistic force is coming from politics disguised as religion or religion disguised as politics. I'm not sure which one it is, Mandisa.
Sometimes they go hand in hand, and
Mm,
politics. There is always supposed to be a separation of state and church, or church
yep.
and state, right? But and that is really what this country was supposed to be founded on, even though it was also founded on the backs of our ancestors through the
Hmm.
enslavement. However, we see that in the public square, that religion and politics have often gone hand in hand with each other, and they're not supposed to. We see religious ideals being being influenced in in education, in lawmaking, and they shouldn't be. And so those lines are always blurred, or they've been blurred in many states, many cities, and across the country. And again, many of us don't have a problem with what people believe as long as they are keeping it out of the public, and things that impact the general public. However, when we see some of these bills being passed in some of these states, especially in some of these southern states, we know that isn't the case. And we're talking also about Christian nationalism, which is rearing its very ugly head, and which there are many Christians who are against this as well, which is one of the reasons why it's important for us to start speaking up, because we realize that we have much more in common than we don't, that just because we don't share the same religious perspectives, that we share common goals when it comes to human rights and our families and the people around us and our communities. And when we see a section of the population that is pushing for policies that are very harmful to everyone, it becomes important that we not just speak up, but that we work together on this.
Yeah.
Yep. Before we jump on.
Go ahead, JK. I know you got questions, JK.
No, not a question, right? Again, I'm happy and I'm smiling because I don't want to be left out, right? Or taking side with Mandisa alone here. So we have, again, Mandisa, we have other beliefs, right? Apart from Christians, right?
Yes.
It is a Christian. So Walter, our another team member, he has also joined, and also Krishna, he has also joined. They are from different religious belief system. So I'm welcoming them before we start this conversation. But Mandisa, when did you started inquest on this, right? Being a non-believer, right? As you mentioned, you were a Christian goer or going to church or growing in a Christian family. How did it turn? At what age did you turn to non-believer?
Actually, I wasn't formally raised in a Christian household. My father was raised in the church and he hated it. He absolutely hated it. My mother's side of the family was just a little different. They weren't formally, now I do have religious family members on that side, but my maternal grandparents were the type that they were like, we don't care what you believe, just don't push it on it. I have uncles who are Muslim, they were a part of the Nation of Islam. And so, and then I have, I have Christian family members. And being raised in New York, you are, you are exposed to various belief systems, various cultures. And so I was raised in the Black conscious community. So I learned a lot about Black history and culture growing up. I learned about racial injustice. I learned about, what it meant to have pride in being Black, especially with the history in this country. So that was pretty much what would be considered a religion to me. But, I grew up around people who were spiritual. I grew up around people who practiced or who left Christianity and wanted to practice more traditional African beliefs. And so, but I did, I'm a classically trained singer. So I was raised, I had a voice instructor, I had a vocal coach who took me to various churches in the New York City area, primarily Queens, where I'm from. And I was singing different churches. And I remember singing in like Seventh-day Adventist churches and like sort of halfway listening to some of the sermons and listening to some of what was being preached and being very confused by it. Especially the Trinity concept of the Christian God. Was just very interesting to me. And like I said, very confusing. It was just like, wow. And it also came across to me as being very confining. So, and then also I learned early on about how Christianity in particular, as well as Islam, but Christianity, how it became the dominant religion of our ancestors, our enslaved ancestors. And so I really was curious as to why so many Black folks still believed in Christianity. So really having this knowledge and having this information growing up really helped to shape my world. It really helped shape my worldview. And also reading various forms of mythology, right? You know, I read Greek mythology, Norse mythology, some African mythology, and learning that there were various religious practices and various, you know, gods that people believed in. So it was really a well-rounded source of information that I had growing up, to where I was exposed to different mythology, different belief systems, but also learning the history of religion and also some of the much of the harm it has caused throughout history and throughout the world. So for a while, yes, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I consider myself spiritual but not religious. Just you know, not really know what it meant. I knew I didn't believe in like white Jesus. I certainly did not believe in, you know, I certainly did not believe in some being in human form that was looking out for us, you know, say, you know, like watching out every move, right? Being the puppet master. So that, but I subscribed for a while to, you know, like a sense of existentialism, right? You know, there are spirits, you know, there is an order of the universe to some, you know, to some degree. But over the years, in really putting those thoughts into perspective, you know, I realized, you know, with the help of some folks that, you know, I realized that, you know, being an atheist is simply putting the concept of God in the same box as like your superheroes, right? Your Superman, your Batman, your Santa Clauses, and all of those other beings that we know are not real in its, you know, like how we exist, but they are real as far as folklore. They are real as far as the stories that are told. You know, they are real in that sense. So putting it into that perspective was very helpful for my position.
I think that's maybe one of the most unique, but also the most understandable explanations of atheism that I've ever heard in terms of the way you came to that decision. And yes, I also do not believe in white Jesus, for the record. But as JK said, we do have Walter and Krishna, I believe, are here. Walter, how are you this week, man?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm good, Walter. It's always good to hear your voice, and hopefully we can see your face, Walter. And Krishna, good to see talk to you again, Krishna.
It's nice meeting you all. It's good talking to you on this particular topic.
Okay.
It's very interesting, the points that you guys have discussed.
Okay, I was going to say like Lord Krishna has arrived. So other belief or faith defenders, they can have some questions as well. So Mandisa, back to you, right? Again, so then you have this realization, right? So kind of a atheist enlightenment, saying that like, okay, I'm going to be a non-believer and also grow a community of Black non-believers and be an atheist. So then what does it mean for you, the word itself, right? People might have asked you this question a number of times. What is faith then? Don't you have a faith on something, or don't you believe in something? And even people even say this, right? It's so ridiculous that they will say like, oh, you have a belief in no God. That is also a belief.
Right. Right. Yeah, so there are so many things that, you know, we can say to that, right? So faith, according to the Bible, is the evidence of things hoped for and things that are unseen, right? So many of us, I don't have a problem if I don't know an answer to something. I don't have a problem saying I don't know. And there are certain outcomes that we are not sure of. There are certain things that we're not going to be sure of the outcome of until they actually happen, right? We can certainly, we can prepare ourselves for the best, hope for the best, expect the worst at times, because there are things that are going to happen to us and happen in life that even if we hope for the best, they just won't. But then there are things that will work out well. But faith, to me, and especially in the sense of belief. Now, the slogan of Black nonbelievers is walking by sight, not faith, because we place value in evidence. We place our value in evidence-based solutions and an evidence-based premise, which means that we try not to walk blindly into anything, right? We're not just going to simply take something on faith and just hope and wish for the best. Blind faith can be dangerous to everyone. Now, being optimistic, right? Times of uncertainty is going to be, that's normal to the human existence. Now there are times where people may say, well, you have faith, or you have confidence, or you can be inspired. I mean, there are all these things that you can say, especially when there are things that we are unsure of. In times of, whether it's times of crisis, whether it is times, when we're going through challenging situations, there are, we are, as human beings, we do want to hope that things are, and hope is not a bad thing. Hope is not the same as faith, right? So, the position of non-believers and atheists, and I mean, atheism is just simply the lack of belief in God, God, spirits, and supernatural beings, as I like to elaborate. However, what that does, or what it should do, is, we are able to apply our humanistic values, right? If we say we want to believe something, we believe in good, right? We put our trust. We put our, if we want to put faith somewhere, we put it in each other, we put it in ourselves. And we try to do our best. We try to, we look at the circumstances, we do what we can, and we hope that things will work out for the best based on what we see and what we're working with around us. So there's always, an application to it, or there should be an application to it. You shouldn't just simply walk into something blindly, but that is what religious belief conditions us to do, or conditions many to do, is to simply take something or take a belief and just have trust that things will work out. However, it also says in your Bible that faith without works is dead, right? That you're not just supposed to simply take something at its, at face value, and you're supposed to explore more. I mean, and granted, if it's good that if you get answers that you need, or the answers that are best for you, because sometimes the answers that we're looking for may not be the answers that we get, may not be the answers that we're looking for, and we have to be prepared for that. We have to be prepared for the discomfort, uncomfortability of certain outcomes. They may not always turn out the way we want them to, and we have to be prepared for that. But that is that is basically sometimes how the world works and how human beings work. And it's not a lazy, and it's not to say that people with faith are lazy, right? But it forces us, it compels us to think about this and put more work into it than some people are comfortable with. And it's that getting comfortable with being uncomfortable at times, knowing that there are going to be times where we don't have the answers, and that we may not get the answers that we're looking for, and we have to be okay with that. It is putting our trust in ourselves and each other. It is, hoping for the best, preparing for things, and not just simply just, And sometimes, hey, I may say cross my fingers that things may work out better, right? And that lends itself to being superstitious in a way. But it's like it's this notion of blind, of blind faith. I don't, and it's funny, we don't have faith to not believe in a God, right? It's looking at the lack of evidence. It's looking at it's looking at what has not been presented as evidence for any God, and we don't have to have faith in that. We can come to a rational conclusion as a result.
And I love that you brought up, the passage of faith without works is dead, because I think what you get particularly from a lot of, and I'll speak specifically about Christians because that's my faith. What you get from a lot of Christian leaders, particularly a lot of white Christian leaders who kind of dabble in politics, is whenever something happens, it's thoughts and prayers, or
right. Oh my gosh.
But there's no work, there's no going into that community, whether it's after a school shooting or after a natural disaster or after something that is tragic, they're not there. And so I want to kind of take this even deep, because I know JK can kind of connect with you on being a non-believer, but I think there's something specific and particular about Black non-belief, because I think there's something, like, even if I'm talking about religion, I think there's something specific about Black Christianity that can't be replicated or duplicated in white Christianity. So in terms of being a Black non-believer, what are some things you think are unique to that journey, unique to kind of that work that needs to be done in that space?
Yes. So I'm currently in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm visiting. And so I had the opportunity.
I got folks
to
out in Jackson. It's a small world.
So I visit. I try to. I always. I'm a huge Black history nerd and the Black history buff. I'm a history buff, period. But wherever I go, I try to take in all the Black history I can. And so you can go to any like civil rights museum and museum that showcases Black history, and it is going to spotlight the history of religion in the church and the pastors. It is overwhelming in our communities, and this comes partly from the enslavement of our ancestors, right? Where many had to accept Christianity. And so we recognize that the church played an important role in Black communities, especially as it pertained to justice and providing community support. We do contend that many of the, like much of the church, like the church's involvement is a little inflated because it was dangerous to get involved, especially during the years of the civil rights movement. What is unique to the Black experience, again, is how our communities were able to take this belief, and turn it into something that was very creative. We look at gospel music, we look at, and also how it has had its influence in other music genres, right? We certainly can acknowledge the role it has played when it comes to how we invoke style in our communities, the pride that we take into how we look, even if we contend that to an extent it can really invoke a sense of conformity, but we look at our we look at the church and how many HBCUs, or for those who don't know, historically Black colleges and universities, were started and were founded by religious institutions. And there are many churches who have done work in communities as far as helping to provide economic relief for community members. There has been some work that but however, though, it does tend to reinforce that sense of apathy that suffering in this life will equate to a better afterlife. And unfortunately, when we listen to a lot of gospel music, there is quite a bit of that, like the "I serve you, Master," and and it's done so in such an artful and creative way that you don't even realize that you're sort of perpetuating the suffering
Right.
of our people. And the way that religion in the church is so, it's influenced in our culture and our entertainment. Almost everything. Like, I'm not sure if you're a Tyler Perry fan. I'm not much. But before he really became mainstream, a lot of his plays and a lot of his work centered around, around church and church mess, church gossip, which is always seems to be like artfully, like over embellished in Black communities, right? So there is definitely a emotional connection to the church because of all of the things that we've endured in this country as a community. However, not realizing that institutions of racism and injustice have its roots in religion, have its roots in Christianity. And even the slave trade was endorsed by the Catholic Church. So these are things that we must be mindful of. But we certainly look at how Black folks in particular in Black communities have just embodied religion and made it into something that almost seems inseparable for us. Again, like I said before, it's like the Black identity seems to it must include being a Christian or being religious in some way. And to be seen as not doing that and to not have a basis in religion, because most Black households, and this still holds true, and statistics back this up, that most Black families and most Black people still subscribe to some sort of religious or spiritual belief. So it's always so prevalent, and so and also thinking about the fact that there were white churches who kept Black folks out, so Black folks had to establish their own religious institutions, because there were many white churches that banned and barred Black folks from attending and worshiping with them. So it was out of a necessity as well. And these are things that we historically, but I also like to add in there that there were some white ideals that just have Black faces on them. So, when it comes to the institutions of the church, and how it has, reinforced, misogyny and the mistreatment of women, the mistreatment of LGBTQ plus folks, and this idea that you have to give to the church to your own detriment. These are things that we have to consider, and the fact that many in Black communities will put so much into their churches and into these representatives, these pastors, that and hold them up to this standard, which does not include accountability at times. So we have to think about that. We have to think about the blind faith, if you will, that has been put into this belief system. How it seems to have informed our communities to the point where we don't think there's any diversity within our communities. And so these are the things that we definitely contend with when it comes to Black communities and Black folks, and talking about different perspectives.